Hello, Bonita Bay Club members. I'm here with Hal Akins, our Director of Golf Course Operations, and we're going to talk a little bit about our first stage of our summer projects. We got a lot going on this summer, but here we are just a little bit past the mid of May here on Creekside, where for those of you that live around this golf course have seen the work going on, and we're regrassing a large number of the greens just to try to get them through to 2025 when we go do the full renovation. So Hal, tell the members a little bit about this process versus when we redo a green or rebuild a green versus just this regrassing process.
Well, obviously this was unexpected, right?
Yeah. Well, we thought the whole golf course was going to be down by now.
Yeah.
Almost 2 months ago, right?
Yeah,
now, 60 days ago.
Yeah. We weren't planning on doing this summer. We were actually planning on rebuilding the whole course. But so obviously there's a good reason why we needed to rebuild it. Not only do we want to update it, but courses age, greens age. The majority of these greens are 33 years old. They were built in 1990. Now they were regrassed in 1999 with the Champion, but the substructure was built in 90. You know how I know that?
Because you were here. You grew it in, right?
I was a student. I did my second internship here in 1990 when we built Creekside. So anyway, obviously this is no replacement for rebuilding them, but we obviously need to get like 2 more years out of them. Our plan now is to rebuild the golf course in 2025. We had some permitting challenges that didn't make that possible this year. So we're going to try to do just a little stopgap. So we're going to go in and we're going to regrass these surfaces with the Champion again so that they are cleaner. We'll till up this and hopefully they'll drain a little bit better, and hopefully that gets us through to when we really get to rebuild them and do it right.
Yeah, one of the things that, is a lot different for this is kind of like we did with the 4 greens on Marsh after the hurricane, is we went in there, almost the same process we're doing here on Creekside, to regrass them. And the thing about those 4 greens is that those were brand new. The infrastructure wasn't 33 years old. We knew that underneath the surface, underneath the putting surface and the grass, that the drainage was great, the gravel blanket was perfect, the greens mix didn't have a whole lot of organics in it, stuff like that. So we don't know what's sitting underneath here, and then the products that were used 33 years ago. So, this isn't a total rebuild. It's a regrass to try to get us to that next renovation. So we're hoping that we don't have a whole lot of issues underneath, and these are going to be great come this fall.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a great point. I mean, those greens are brand new, basically. I mean, they're only a couple years old. Yeah. They were built in 20, and so, these obviously there's a whole lot of difference. There's, since 1990, there's 30 inches of mix over the top of the gravel blanket here, and it's just you build up about a half an inch a year, and so it's just over those years it's built up. So anyway. Those were easy because we just went in and we stripped off the top 2.5 inches where the organics had accumulated since they were grassed, and then we backfilled, and then we grassed them, and that went well, and that should be fine. This is a little different. We don't want to go down, 28 inches or 18 inches, 18 inches to the original mix. I mean, because look we've got to tie it into everything. It's obviously expensive. We're just trying to do something that cleans them up and gets them healthy enough that we can make it through the next 2 seasons, and they're good. We want them to be good. I mean, we obviously had some issues with them there toward the end of the season, and a lot of it's because we weren't planning on being open, but they're old.
Yeah,
they're old. I mean, so that's why we want to rebuild them anyway.
The process of this is, as well as that, going in there, you see this area we're at here where you have the putting surface here, and then the surround has also been cut out so that you can tie that back in, because over the years you get kind of little dips on the edge and the outside rises more because of all the top dressing.
Yep.
And then this also versus a rebuild that's the exact same undulations in it, the same grade and everything like that. And it's really cool how they grid it out and they laser it and put the numbers on the green to show you the slope from one part to the next. And when you see those numbers on the green, as a golfer, it kind of says, oh, so that's why I always hit it 5 feet by, or that's why I never get the ball to the hole where it looks like it's really flat and it's actually going down and away from you, or you're actually going into it. So how they do that and keep it the same is really interesting, because you come out here and all you see is dirt and you're like, okay, well, it's going to have to change a lot.
How are they going to put it back the way it was?
And the numbers go on the grass. It's all mapped out.
Yep.
And then you take the grass off and you come back and you put it back in the same spot. So that's a really cool process. The regrassing versus the rebuild when you're just looking at the bunker of the green. So that's something that I found really neat.
Well, you know, during the Creekside renovation process with our committee, everyone decided that they liked the Creekside greens. Mm-hmm. So we want to preserve the contours and the slopes in the greens as much as possible. Well, so if we're going to do this, then we need to make sure that we, you know, maintain that so that when we get ready in 2025, we can do that then as well. Yeah. So we go out and we do what we call a grid. We grid them every 10 foot. So you got to, you know, points every 10 foot, and there's just a square grid out here, and we like mark it on the green, and then we also record it on a graph so that we can go back, and then we have what we call benchmarks that down at each end of the green, and that's what our reference points is, so that we come back after we've done everything and get ready to grass them. When we want to regrade them, we use those benchmarks to go back out and spot all these new elevations in here, and that's how we make sure that they are maintained as the same surface, same slope, same contours, you know. Yeah,
it's you know, it's pretty cool. Like, you'll hear the phrase, well, we're going to laser the greens and build them as they were and rebuild them and stuff, and you know, you kind of go, oh, okay, they laser them and then they go rebuild them. But when you actually see the process, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And one thing too you can see over the years is that this irrigation, I think, was 2011.
Mm-hmm.
So we put in the newer high-tech irrigation in 2011, and you can see right here where those heads started 3 feet away from the green, and now they're 7.5 feet away from the green, just because greens shrink over time. And that's something you also realize through the years when you're going back in to do a renovation or a rebuild of a green is how much they've shrunk. And when these were done, they didn't have the technology of putting the wire underneath that you can find and maintain.
Well, people
the size of the greens.
Didn't maintain the edges as well back, you know, not that long ago. I mean, you know, people have seen where we edge the greens, you know, every week.
Yeah.
And that's to prevent that from happening, is to prevent the grass from encroaching, which is how the green shrinks. All this grass out here is more aggressive than the greens grass. So it'll encroach into the green. So we edge and keep that perimeter right where it is when we started. So that's the purpose in that, you know.
Okay.
So when we do rebuild in 25, we're going to get back out to the original sizes of the greens.
Yeah. Well, that'll be nice. I think most of us golfers appreciate a little bit bigger green when we're coming in there.
Targets
These
now
are really small targets, and they have a lot of undulation, which makes this golf course fun. You know, when we redid those 4 greens on Marsh, from the day of grassing to the day of opening was 12 weeks through the wintertime. That was from the grassing out when we started, you know, peeling off the old grass. And so we're looking at about a 14 to 15 week period. Is kind of what we're thinking with these greens. And we also kind of know that if we grass in 2 different phases, we might get 9 holes back, but we're going to see how the construction process goes. I'm not holding you to that. It was just, that's the things we're talking about. And so as we get into the summer months here and we know that it's warm, it'll be interesting to see how much faster the grass grows on these versus when we did Marsh.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how this grow-in process. I've always wanted to, it's always like this, you know, you always want to grow them in as fast as you can, but I've always thought that maybe I think I could get them ready in maybe 8-9 weeks, you know? So I'm thinking, we'll see.
You're calling it out on yourself. That's what I gotta say.
Well, you know, we gotta have a goal.
Okay.
So, but this is a little bit different process, of course. You know, as you were saying, not only does the green build up, but there's collar around it, it builds up, but it builds up faster because the green is tight and short, so it can only trap so much sand. The collar is has more leaf blade up there, and so it traps more sand. So every time you top dress, you brush, and the collar gets bigger because it's holding more sand and it's building up faster. So part of this is, like you were saying, like in front, we call them bird baths, sand dams, whatever you want to call them. In the low spots in the fronts of greens and where water runs off, that pulls sand and debris and organic matter to that point, and it builds up that collar even more. So as part of this, the greens that we're going to resurface, we're going to go in there and we're going to shave down that collar right in front of the green and make sure it all falls off like it's supposed to, instead of the water kind of settling in and then being, because that's a problem, because that area will stay wet. And if you notice, the areas that we had the most trouble in were those areas where the water couldn't like shed off the green properly, and so the water just sits there and it saturates that area and it basically drowns the plant.
Yeah, so anybody that's been out, or we'll even see it up in the clubhouse area on the older chipping green right there, that after a heavy rain, you can see it where the water puddles up in the one area, and you can see it running right there and just stop. And so that'll be another thing that helps out with the condition of the greens. And I know when it's dead wet or really, really dry, you have to control your moisture, and that's what creates issues with the greens.
Controlling the moisture on greens anywhere is like the number one issue, like for growing healthy turf. You don't want to be too wet and you don't want to be too dry. You got to have the right amount of moisture. You don't want to water too little, and you want to water just enough. That's obviously important. That's why we build greens out of sand, so that the water will move through them.
All right, well, we just wanted to give the membership an update on what was going on out here on Creekside. We just started the preliminary construction parts of the 4-bay golf performance center on the Creekside driving range, and we'll also be doing a lot of stuff on the back of the Marsh driving range, some other things on the Creekside driving range. And then once we get into July, that's when we're moving out. Well, we're out there besides just that, but then that's when the big construction starts out at Naples with the Naples driving range, the Sable Golf Course, and the clubhouse out there, of course. So we'll probably come back in a few weeks, give you another update on how we're coming along on Creekside, try to get a better idea on when we're going to have this golf course open. We want to have as much availability for the members we can that are here year-round as well. So
it's always a challenge.
Yeah. As always, we appreciate everything you guys did. Everybody still talks about all the recovery from the hurricane. It's not forgotten. And we look forward to another great summer of projects and bringing everything back online as soon as we can.
Yeah, it's always fun to make things better, right?
That's right.
That's what we do here at Bonita Bay, right?
We sure do. All right, well, as always, if you have any questions, feel free to contact Hal or myself at any time.
Take care.